Okay, I think we're back. My bad, really bad internet connection for whatever reason. Uh, Welcome back to Pistons Talk podcast post-game show. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. Before we get into today's podcast, uh, little favor I ask you guys as you're watching live on YouTube right now is hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you're an audio listener, make sure to give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. But let's get into this game. Lot to unpack, lot to get into. And when we're done kind of talking about these quarters, we'll open up the show to Q&A like we usually do. So what I want to focus on in the first quarter was I really liked the way Cade was looking to set up his teammates. He had 7 assists to start off the game. The connection with him and Jalen Duren is just getting stronger and stronger throughout the season. And you love to see it. The Pistons were just off to a great start, but this was an Atlanta Hawks team that had lost 8 straight games, and they were looking to get back in the win column. And this isn't the same Hawks team we saw 2 weeks ago in Atlanta. Had a lot more fight to them, and we had a really hard time keeping the ball out of the painted area. And the way the Hawks were just moving the ball side to side, the Pistons just rotation-wise switching on the perimeter. The Hawks were getting a lot of easy baskets, and they were getting a lot of wide open threes. But the Pistons do keep a lead in the first quarter, 35-34 to end it. Going into the second quarter, we just could not contain Trae Young. He was getting to the free throw line, and I thought defensively in the second quarter, that was probably up there with one of the worst defensive quarters I've seen from, our Detroit Pistons this season, you guys. It's really bad. And I think a big reason why Trae Young was so effective tonight is 2 out of the 3 players that we threw at him throughout the night, Ausar Thompson, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Malik Beasley. When Trae Young was switched on to Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., he was getting to the free throw line, and he was getting whatever the hell he wanted. I think the reason why Trae struggled so bad in Atlanta is because we had Ausar on him from start to finish, and tonight, for whatever reason, we kept switching THJ, and Malik. I thought Malik, for the most part, he did an okay job, but I would have much rather have Ausar on him for a majority of the game. Hawks got basically what they wanted. They dropped 73 points on the Pistons, and this was such a weird second quarter, you guys. We got to the free throw line, but we only made 3 field goals for the entire second quarter. There was a point where the Pistons didn't score a field goal for 8 straight minutes, and they still somehow kept it to a 9-point game. The Hawks were up as much as 14 points at one point. But going into halftime, Hawks 73, Pistons 64. Coming out of halftime, I was either expecting the Pistons just to completely lay down because they were tired, having a back-to-back, or come out aggressive. They came out aggressive. Much better defensively, closing out, communication on defense, switching. And the Pistons got in the bonus in the first 2 minutes of this third quarter, which that's why they shot so many free throws tonight. Malik Beasley was hitting threes. Caden Duren pick and rolls were the same kind of like how they were in the first quarter. But I was really hoping the Pistons would have taken advantage of being in the bonus, especially in the third quarter. Would have liked to see them get to the line a little bit more. But they knocked Atlanta's lead down to only 3 points to end the third quarter, 101-98. And going into the fourth, you're only trailing 3 points to go into the fourth quarter. But, the first couple of minutes, Atlanta gets back out to an 8-point lead, and it's just too many fouls to start the fourth. And we can talk about Tony Brothers. We can talk about the officiating. I thought on both sides, some calls were just not needed. Like the Malik Beasley contesting for a block on Zachary Ricochet, that's not a flagrant one in my opinion. I didn't really think that was an unnecessary um, block attempt by Malik, but the way Ricochet fell, I guess the refs had to call stuff like that. Um, both teams got into the bonus in the fourth quarter. There was a lot of following on both sides. I think each team shot over 30 free throws tonight. Asar Thompson, I felt like was a big key why not only that the Pistons got back into this game, they tied the game. I thought because of him, his defense on Trae Young in the fourth especially was really bothering him. Trae Young did get away with a lot of push-offs and elbows to the midsection, and that's just the type of player he is. He's really hard to stay in front of. But Pistons do lose this one, 132 to 130. Trae Young hits a very deep two-pointer, gives them a 2-point lead with 1.6 seconds left. And the Pistons, I think a lot of people are going to fixate on this play. Cade has the ball. He's inbounding it. And the initial play, if you go back and watch, Cade wanted to pass the ball to Malik, but it wasn't available. So plan B was to try to throw it up to Tobias Harris. Now, mind you, that same play that we just watched fail worked against Miami with Jalen Duren a couple times this year. I'm not really mad at the final play. The execution could have been a little bit better, but you have to tip your cap to the Atlanta Hawks for defending it very well. And when Trae Young goes for 17 points in the fourth quarter alone, he has been on a heater ever since he didn't make the All-Star team. You can't really look at the Atlanta Hawks record and think they're going to be an easy win. Any basketball team in the NBA, they have NBA players for a reason. You can't take them lightly. I thought defensively, this was a very bad defensive game from the Detroit Pistons. Giving up over 132 points is not really Pistons-like this season. It could have been because they're on a back-to-back and they were a little bit tired. Maybe. I'm not giving that an excuse, but it could be a possibility. But overall, the Pistons do have a pretty easy schedule outside of the Cavs on Wednesday. They got the Hornets later on in the week, and I can't remember who else they play. But, overall, still playing 500 basketball, 24 or 25 and 25 now. So, I mean, I like where this team is at. Just the effort tonight. I wanted it to be a little bit more consistent defensively. I didn't like the choice of switching Malik and Tim on Trae just because how deadly he is as just an offensive threat. But I'm just nitpicking at this point. We're going to take a quick break, you guys. And after that quick break, we are going to answer any questions, comments, overall thoughts you guys have about this game or, maybe the trading deadline. It is February 3rd as we're recording this podcast. Deadline ends February 6th. So you guys have any questions, thoughts about the Zach LaVine trade? Maybe there's a player that you think the Pistons have a possibility to land. Drop them down below in the comment section if you haven't already, and we will answer that after we come back from commercial break. Okay, guys, we are back. Now, this is the part of the podcast where we open up the show to any questions and comments. We'll probably answer for the next 10, 20 minutes or so. Or if there's a trade during this time frame, we might extend the podcast longer. Hopefully, there's not a trade right away, right away, because I'm absolutely exhausted. But we do have a question from Milan. Good morning. Don't know where it is where you're at, Milan, but good morning. Torrey Craig was waived. Should we be interested? Great question, Milan. I know a couple of years ago when they initially hired Monty Williams, there was some interest from the front office. Now, I don't know if that has changed. Torrey Craig is a good under the radar player. My only question would be is if you were to pick him up on waivers, what happens with the forward minutes on this team? I honestly think he's probably going to go to a contender. Like maybe he goes back to Phoenix. Maybe there's a trade where a contender has an available roster spot and they could use him. I just don't think right now it makes a whole lot of sense for the Detroit Pistons to go out and get a Torrey Craig because he was a part of a trade yesterday that did involve Zach LaVine. But appreciate the question, man. Jay Hart, I knew Tizzle would be in on the last play. Odd call by JB, however. Is it just me, or is this Pistons squad gaining the entertainment gene? Win or lose, this team is fun to watch. Lots to unpack here. Yeah, Asar Thompson has been very good since he's come back from his blood clot. He's still on that minute restriction. We're still not getting him close to 30 minutes a game, which I think is where this coaching staff wants to play him. Obviously, I can even see it in certain spurts of the game. Like his conditioning, he's still trying to get in a basketball shape. I think we forget this guy almost missed 10 months of action because of his blood clots, and he's still getting in shape. And it's even taken him a couple months to try to get into that basketball shape. But, each and every game, he's getting better and better. Now, the out of bounds call with JB, like, I think if Malik was open and he takes the final shot, we're having a different conversation versus why did Cade lob it to Tobias? Should have lobbed it to Duren. Like, I understand it. I get it. But that plays worked before for the Pistons to win games. To answer your question about is this Piston squad gaining the entertainment gene? Absolutely. I've been pretty consistent with this team in terms of I called them the cardiac kids because every game, every third, fourth quarter, it's going down to the wire, back and forth, chest pains. Like this team's very entertaining. And I think it's actually a treat to watch this team now because last year we only watched just to see how bad it was and see if we could break that losing streak and get a win. Where this year, I'm fully expecting the Pistons to be in each and every game and it going down to the wire. So it's a complete 180 from last season. But I do enjoy watching these games. I'm sure a lot of you guys, as well as being Detroit Pistons fans, being subscribed to this podcast, whether you listen or watch us live on YouTube, it's a fun basketball team. They're young. Are they perfect? No, they're still learning. There's a lot of holes on this roster, but they make up for it for just, scrapping. They might not be the most talented team in the NBA, but they don't give up. And I think that's why they're so entertaining this year. Ronald McDonald, 1977. We need a second scorer when Cade is off. I feel like we've talked about this ad nauseum. We've talked about how when Cade goes to the bench, the offense gets very stagnant. And obviously, trading deadline 3 days away. Hopefully, Trajan Langdon and the Detroit Pistons front office can get this team more secondary, not only ball handling, but secondary scoring option help. Because when Cade does go to the bench, more often than not, this team struggles to set up offensively, and they struggle to put the ball in the basket if Malik Beasley isn't draining threes. And Malik Beasley is having an incredible season, but you can't rely on him to make 6-7 threes every night. You're going to need more help out there. And I think there are a lot of guys at this trading deadline that the Pistons can acquire to help them out with that. I have a comment from Dolly. I think JB should go to the bench earlier. Playing during 8 minutes, running after Trae Young is too much. Beasley should have taken the last shot. Great game. I agree. I think the one thing with JB that you could nitpick, especially when you want to talk about rotations, is he's a little bit stubborn to a fault where he's playing 10 guys, and those are the 10 guys that are going to play. We have Paul Reed on the bench, and we've talked about it before. When these guys are on the second night of a back-to-back, why not lean on guys like Wendell Moore, Paul Reed, to get some minutes because these guys just played last night. I agree. Playing him 8 minutes straight, he was playing really good, and I think JB's rewarding his play. But yeah, he looked pretty gassed by the time it was the fourth quarter. And I agree. I think if you go watch the last play of the game, Cade is looking for Beasley immediately. He doesn't even look into Tobias' direction until like the third or fourth second because they didn't want to get a 5-second count and that be a turnover the last possession of the game. But I think if Beasley was open, Cade probably would have passed it to him. That's probably the guy that you want taking a last-second big-time shot to win you the basketball game. But it was a good game. You just can't have second quarters. You can't go 8 straight minutes without a field goal. If they weren't getting to the free throw line, Atlanta probably would have been up at least 20, 25 at best. But overall, still a very entertaining basketball team. Josh Prince, who are the Pistons going for? I'm assuming this is a trading deadline question. To try to answer it, I think when you look at this roster, there's a couple of holes. You could look at the front court. In terms of this team being pretty small in the front court, you don't have a true 7-footer on this basketball team. It could be front court help. I think where I would go is backup point guard help because Marcus Sasser tonight played 10 minutes, scored 2 points. You're going to need more out of your backup guard. You can't be playing 10 minutes and only giving me 2 points. You need more secondary ball handling help, backup point guard help. So Cade can actually get a legitimate rest on the bench and come back in fresh after maybe resting anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. I think that's where they probably go if I had to guess, Josh. But hey, I could be wrong. We've had 2 blockbuster trades in the past 2 days. It's honestly kind of wild. Red Baron, Trae and Brunson know how to fling their head back and get a call better than anyone. It's honestly a lost art, I would say. Trae Young does a very good job of selling contact. So does Jalen Brunson. I would even say James Harden a few years ago was the master of selling contact. I would say that like when you're trying to defend them, you got to keep your hands like to yourself because if you have your hands out, they're just going to follow bait it. If they feel that you're trailing them and behind them, they're just going to like you said, like put their head back and try to bait a foul. It's very frustrating to watch because it's not really a basketball play. You're kind of relying on the referees or the officials for that matter to bail you out. And like when I'm watching it, I'm like, yeah, that is not basketball. You're just kind of relying on the officials to bail you out. And I honestly hate, when we do play a Trae Young or a Giannis or a Jalen Brunson because they just rely so much on the officials to get them to the free throw line. Want to answer a question from TZ, it's not even so much a question. It's more of a comment. And we can get into the Pelicans and what they may or may not do. So he said he wants Zion. Zion is their highest paid player, franchise player, I would say. It'll be very interesting to see what the Pels do. I know the Warriors have asked about Zion's availability because I think the Warriors are going to be the next team to make a blockbuster trade because they're trying to save their season. You have Steph Curry. You want to, make a move. Now, for the Pistons, I don't really think that they'd be in the market for Zion just for the fact of the matter is if you look at all the players that Trajan acquired, all of the veterans that he went out and signed play games. Zion, for a majority of his career, hasn't been healthy, hasn't really taken care of himself in terms of staying in shape. But there's no denying when he is healthy, he's one of the best basketball players in the world. And it's a huge risk, I think, for any team trying to trade for Zion. But there's no denying the talent. I don't think the Pistons really want to, give a majority of their younger assets to get a Zion because they don't have the draft capital I'm sure New Orleans is looking for. Like, I think sometimes we forget, or maybe you guys don't forget, you just want these players, but your first round draft pick belongs to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And that dates back from trading for Isaiah Stewart on draft night. You don't have draft picks, especially first, that you can trade right now. And I think that's a problem when we talk about these stars. I think Zion's a good talent, but it's very risky given his health and given how there are certain times where he's not showing up to, the team playing on time. There are instances where, 1 year he's in peak shape, other years he's, pushing up to 300 pounds. Like, I think trading for Zion would be such a risk for this basketball team, but there's no denying the talent with a Zion Williamson. I have a question from Nate Myers. Shout out to Nate. I did see your direct message yesterday on IG. If you guys ever want to reach out to me on any social media platform, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we're basically everywhere. The DMs are always open for you guys. But Nate has a comment. Jose Alvarado or Lonzo Ball would be good in my opinion. I think your head is in the right place. I think Jose Alvarado, you can definitely, correlate the Trajan Langdon, Michael Blackstone, Fred Vincent connections with the Pelicans and Jose Alvarado. He's on a very cheap deal. There was a report earlier this week that the Pistons and Pelicans have a deal in place for a smaller move to help them get under the luxury tax. It could be Jose Alvarado. It could be Jordan Hawkins. It could be Daniel Tice. It could be a majority of their players that are kind of under that $6 to $1 million range. So I'd keep an eye on Jose Alvarado. Lonzo Ball also has a New Orleans connection. He was with the Pelicans for a short amount of time. He is an expiring $20 million deal. Who knows what the Chicago Bulls are going to be doing at this deadline after they did just trade Zach LaVine. There's reporting that Lonzo Ball's asking price from the Bulls is just a second-round pick right now, but it is an expiring $20 million at the end of the day. I think if you're the Detroit Pistons and you get a gauge that Lonzo would be interested coming to Detroit, I think a second-round pick for his services could really help this basketball team, in my opinion. I think a guy like Lonzo makes a whole lot of sense for this basketball team in a backup role, I want to say. Not starting, in a backup role, being your backup point guard, giving you a good 10, 15 minutes off the bench, leading the second unit. We're not coming up here and saying Lonzo Ball should start next to Cade Cunningham. Lonzo Ball as a reserve, I think, makes sense. I think the only risk with Lonzo is how long is his knee going to hold up? He didn't play for over, 300 days? He had a really nasty injury to his knee area, but I would be open to a Lonzo Ball. I've also told you guys like Mike Conley might be a guy. Malcolm Brogdon could be a guy. I think if you're looking in terms of just like reserved backup point guards, I feel like there's a pretty big market for the backup point guard for not only the Detroit Pistons, but the entire NBA at this trading deadline. But both of those names, Nate, are great name drops. I honestly think that's probably where Trajan and the Pistons are going to go is get Cade Cunningham more help off the bench so the guy doesn't have to play 35 to 38 minutes every night. Give him an opportunity to get some rest in between quarters because no shot at Marcus Astor. We've been very consistent with this throughout the season. We're just playing the guy out of position. If you have Lonzo Ball off the bench, you could have Marcus Astor next to him playing shooting guard, playing off ball where he thrives of just scoring and being the bucket getter that he is. Right now, having him initiate offense, he just seems very uncomfortable. I think if you had him off ball next to a primary ball handler, he would do so much better in my personal opinion. But I do want to wrap up this podcast, you guys. We've been on for almost around 30 minutes, 27 minutes to be exact. But I do appreciate all of you guys, coming in after this Pistons loss. I know it's not the way we probably wanted it to end. But again, the Hawks win 132 to 130. Trae Young went absolute bonkers, hit the game-winning shot. I had 17 points in the fourth quarter alone, but Pistons' next game is on Wednesday against the Cleveland Cavaliers. That is going to be a huge game. It's going to be a big test. Is it home? You have to really game plan for that team. Easier said than done. I'm sure JB and his coaching staff have their work cut out for them, but do appreciate you guys watching this podcast for around the last 30 minutes or so. If you could, on your way out, hit that like button if you are watching live on YouTube. Really does help the YouTube algorithm push out more of our Pistons content to not only yourself, but to other Detroit Pistons fans that enjoyed the Detroit Pistons. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Hope you guys have a great night. Take care and go Pistons.